All right. Well, good morning. Welcome to the Notary Governance meeting for the Fil Plus project. Today is March 8th, 2022. We have a big full session today. So let's take a look at a very high level what we're going to talk about. Always making time for new introductions, the metrics. We're going to spend again a recap of the notary activity. Right now we're in the scoring phase of the election. So we'll be taking some time to talk about that process. We had 3 open issues come through in Github, so we'll be making sure that we allocate plenty of time for that. And we also had 2 community discussions that we'll be addressing. So a little bit more specifics as we go on the call, but at a very high level, that's what you can expect. If you have any questions on this call, always feel free to unmute and say, hey, can I jump in? Or if you feel more comfortable, feel free to comment in the text box in the chat that's running. Galen, Deep, and myself have that up, and we'll be happy to share. We put the slide deck in the chat for this Slack, so if you're curious to pull the slide up and go with us, feel free. We also have links that we'll post in the chat as well as a slide deck as we go through. This is a quick friendly hello. If this is your first time coming, Deep, Galen, and myself are kind of the stewards to help make sure this program has love. We all have a kind of one unique aspect that we bring to the team, but we're usually working as like one cohesive unit as we start going through. So if you have any specific questions, these are kind of the subject domains where you could ping us on, or as always, just ping all 3 of us and we'll just kind of get back to you with what we can do to help. And with that, if this is your first time on the call, you've never been here before, this would be a great time to pop into chat. Hi, my name's Kevin, first time on the call. I'm from California, just looking forward to getting started. I didn't file an application, but I'm really curious about the program, or I did file an application and I'm curious to know more, whatever it may be. If you put that into chat, it just kind of helps us know who you are, and we can kind of answer any questions that may come up and just kind of welcome you. Or sit back, relax, and just kind of hang out with us. Choice is yours. So with that, let's take a little bit of time and take a look at what's changed in the program over the past 2 weeks. So when we take a look at this slide, we've been showing it for the last 4 weeks. What we've been doing is calling out 3 key metrics, and these are the ones that we're looking at as the program overall. And the one in the very top left is the average time to data cap. And this is what our program is focusing on for 2022, is to get that number down to be as quick as possible. And right now it's standing around the 1 day, 17, 16-hour mark. I went back and looked at a few slide decks over the past few weeks. That seems to be our average. Like we go up an hour, we go down an hour, but on average, it takes us about a day and 3/4 to like average time get that data out. What we're also looking at is what's the average time to first response. So when someone files a ticket, when someone makes that request, how quickly can we as a community get that data, say, hey, we're on the ball, we're looking at this, we're getting back to you. So again, one of our goals this year is to kind of take a look at like what notaries in the program are making this go really, really fast, and what notaries need a little bit extra time, and then spending time with those notaries to see what can we do to make that participation just a little bit faster. Because what we've recognized is that if you take a look at the time to data cap and the response, that's what directly contributes to this data cap allocated to clients. And we're always continually trying to build the network, make it more robust. So if you have any questions about this data, where we pull it, here's the link. It's also in the deck. And what we're going to be doing is talking a little bit more about like how are we having a leaderboard to see who's doing this fastest and most effective of the notaries in our team. Taking a look at when that data comes in, it's always fun to take a look at like what's the data look like. And so this is the new Starboard Venture deals, the link's here. So if you want to see it, you could follow along with that link as well. But the 2 call outs I'd like to make is just how much of the data on the network is coming from the Fil Plus program. So if you take a look in terms of size, like in terms of deals, the rest of the network is 18 petabytes, but the Fil Plus is 56% of all network activity in terms of size and scale coming from this program. So we're growing, we're making the most impact, and this is obviously just kind of highlighting the need for what we're doing. And the second thing, the active deal count that's taking place, again, just a massive amount of deals are coming from us in the Fil Plus program. We're 65% of this network. So I think the highlight here is like making sure this moves forward, and this is a key part of that Filecoin project. So I will pause there if anybody has any questions about metrics or would like to dive in before we go on to anything else with the notary activity.
Yeah, I had a quick question on that. You said the average time to data cap's about a day, but the average time to first response is 6 days. Is that average time to data cap a day after that first six?
That's correct.
I can jump in
Go
here.
ahead.
The average time to data cap is also counting our auto verifier, which is the glyph auto verifying notary. And so that is happening typically a lot faster, and we get a lot of responses from that. So that helps kind of change how that average is calculated. Then the time to first response from notary is looking just at the direct notary activities. That's in the client onboarding repo, excuse me. So that's from when a client uses the form to open an issue directly with a notary to how long until those notaries reply.
Got it.
Good flag, Bruce. Thanks for that. All right, we have quite a few notary activity issues to flag here. The first is just taking a look that we have 9 open large data sets that are awaiting notary activity. So if you're a notary on this call or watching this on YouTube in the next day or so, these are awaiting signatures. We've tagged the link here if you want to sign in. If you have any questions, let us know, but we have 9 that are waiting, ready to go. And these are what we're talking about with like that direct action. We're like, great, these are ready for you. So follow that link. We have 9 ready. And just as a call out, this is a lot less. After everything was Slingshot, we had an average of around 20, 25. So it is nice to see this number coming down after that really big surge, which unfortunately happened around Christmas and New Year's. So it's nice to see. So with that, let's get into the elections and key dates and all the issues that were filed in the repo here. So first off, let's talk about the key dates for the election in progress. So just as a reminder, the elections were open from February 21st to March 4th. And right now we are in the scoring and additional follow-up. We have a whole slide to talk about what that scoring looks like. But one thing I wanted to call out was that we received over 60 applications for notaries, which was fabulous to see this outpouring. So what we're going to do right now is we are looking at any additional information in those applications. So if you turn one in, you might have seen a question like, how much data cap have you issued in the past, or where are you located? As Galen, Deep, and myself start going through these applications, if there's any field where we need more information to kind of give it a better score, we'll be reaching out. So one thing I wanted to kind of flag here on the Notary Governance, and I'll flag in the GitHub repo, is that if you haven't included your Slack handle for the Filecoin Slack channel, I may ask, like, hey, love the application. We'll talk here at GitHub. How can we keep talking in Slack? And that will make sure that we have part of that community that can be reached. And so, yeah, long story short, we'll be asking for your Slack if it's not part of the handle in your application to go through. Here's what the scoring process looks like. We spent a lot of time on the last call, so just make this as a review. What we're doing is we're taking each line from your application that was turned on GitHub repo and putting it into some type of scoring repository that looks very similar to this template that you filled out. And then we're saying which category does it fit. So if you say, yes, I have a stake exposure of 200,000 tokens, we take a look at this and say, great, that puts you in the L1 category. And what we're doing is we're going through each individual section from the application and then assign its scoring metric in this template. This template then lets us have a very public viewable, a very like scientific way to say like, these are why these notaries were selected based off these criteria that they met. So this is a very time consuming process going through those 60 applications, reading each and every line, making sure that we have all the information. So if you were curious, please follow that link to see what those scoring criteria were. And just be ready because we'll be tagging you in GitHub and Slack like, hey, we were going through your application and I don't see anything about your industry reputation. Can you please provide a Twitch, Twitter, a website, whatever it may be, so we can come back. So be ready for those pings. That'll make sure the process goes faster. And we'll be pinging you this week and next for that information. Before I move on from the scoring, I'm curious if anybody on the line would like to ask any questions or any comments about the scoring process to come in the next 2 weeks. All right. Feel free to hop in any other time. All right, we got quite a few open issues. So I think we're probably going to do a little bit of round robin because I've been talking for a few minutes straight. So the first issue that we had come in, it was about notary geolocations. So let's pull up the issue, and this came from Fatman13. Thank you for filing this. And this has to do with the increased number of notaries, remove the limit on the notaries based on geolocations. Deep, did you want to talk to this one specifically?
Sure can. So this is pretty interesting because in the past, as you guys are aware, we've done scoring based on individual applications within ranked against a region, and then we have a cutoff per region, and then basically use that to elect more notaries. As some of you may remember, this time around, one of the interesting topics of conversation was that, like, do we want to change that boundary? So do we want it to be region-based or country-based, or do we want to change allocation for certain regions based on like how like geopolitical changes are happening in the world around us? There's also a second general thread of just wanting to increase the total number of notaries. And so like we sort of were like, let's also look at the data that we're getting from the applications that are coming in. So out of the 61 applications, there's actually like quite a bit of distribution this time, much more symmetric across several regions compared to the past 2 election cycles that we ran. And so I do think that in general, we're probably going to end up having more notaries and then more notaries per region. But removing the geo limit is pretty interesting because I think the reason it was put in to begin with was that we wanted a balance of people that were experts at different things, right? And so there are two proxies for this. There's the use case diversity one, which is like, what are you actually good at and what are you excited to bring on clients for? And then regional, which is basically a proxy for like, do you understand regional business practices or do you understand local languages that enable you to be disproportionately capable of reviewing and verifying a client coming in from a specific region? So I'd actually say that like the motivation behind this issue is just to say that let's get more data cap in more regions, or let's get more data cap out there in general, and not gated based on each region. But I actually think the regions are an interesting lever. I don't know, Fatman, if you're here to talk about this, but I would rather approach this from the angle of let's just add more notaries per region, or let's increase the number of people we're seeing. But keeping the region gives us the ability to help, clients have a better user experience as well when they're coming in from a country that isn't like a native English speaking country, for example, and needs to find people that they can work with to get verified. And this gives them the path to getting there. We are building expertise in different like business practices in different regions and regulatory environments. And also, I think it serves as a pretty good tool of figuring out like where we have distribution and where we have gap, and where we can sort of bring on net new people to the network. So I agree with the sentiment behind this issue. I'm down to sort of look at how we can overall continue to bring on more and more active notaries. I think that's generally a goal for the community overall and has been pretty uncontroversially supported by everybody in the last couple of governance calls. But I think that the geo limit side of things can sort of be much, much looser and achieve some of these goals without necessarily removing it. But I'd love to hear from other people as well. It's an open discussion. This is just my opinion.
I agree with you there. We should have some geo limit because, for example, I'm in Europe, and I don't know what's going on in Australia or in Asia, and I guess the same goes for them in Europe. So I think the geo limit is a good idea to have things distributed over the planet and have your notary divided and have experts in each region.
Yeah, I also agree with your keeps the geo limit because we really don't know what's happening in Asia, honestly. Even I know Chinese, but I don't really know what the Chinese government does and what is the law and the governance issue. So if we approve something we don't really know, that's a potential risk. So I think that the local people are doing a notary investigation where due diligence will be better. What we lack is tools. It's not like a region. Like add more, remove the geo limit. It's just like more notary doing the job, but it doesn't help, right?
Yeah, some very good points here. And I think, again, this issue, issue number 428 is open. And so we can hear, some people, if they want to post comments async as well. And all of the notary applications are open and available as well. So if you want to see, as we're going through scoring, as we're doing the conversations back and forth, like people on this call, you can go check those other notary applications too and see the different, the number of notaries that applied, where they've applied from, and that sort of thing.
All right. If there's any follow-ups to this, we'll have plenty of time at the end for discussion. Thank you for flagging this. So very similar is the geo limit for power distribution. Deep, do you want to do the same handover?
Yeah, this to me is extremely similar to the previous topic, where it's basically like how we ensure that we get data gap allocated to regions where they actually have like available network presence. So the way we were framing it in the past was basically if there's a lot of data cap available in a particular region. Oh, Carrie, do you mind going back to the previous slide? I think when you admitted somebody from the lobby, you hopped ahead. Cool, thanks. Yeah, so in the past, we were mentioning this basically as a geographic distribution of like the relevance of notaries, where it's like the more notaries are, the more data cap there should be. And this issue is basically saying, why don't we look at power distribution instead? I actually really like this suggestion. I think that like as I was reading over this, one thing that came to mind for me was a lot of how data cap is going on today is based on large data set notaries. So measuring the presence of other individual notaries in the region and using that as an indicator of whether or not we want more presence of notaries there may not be the best way to do it. And so I had one proposal for this, which was basically that maybe we have some sort of combination of the two. Now, this could be as simple as like adding in both of them as parameters to just say, hey, like, are we getting the diversity in the world that we want to see in terms of presence in the network? Second, there is an angle here. There's the devil's advocate where like the Filecoin Plus system doesn't necessarily need to just follow like where current power distribution is, because then we'd have like disproportionate presence in certain regions where like there's been like much more incentive in the past to perform. But yeah, like a little like undecided on this. Actually, I think it's a very valid idea, and I would love to hear. I don't know if people have had the chance to read it, but would love to hear if you have. If not, I can do a quick summary because I don't think you is here, or sorry, Fatman is here. Oh, Galen, you want to go for it?
Yeah, maybe I'm misunderstanding from this, but wouldn't this sort of disproportionately incentivize, wouldn't this make it harder for the smaller regions to then start to get more notaries and data cap? Because is this going to create an inverse pressure on the network? I think the intent here is let's have more notaries where we need more notaries, which makes sense. But then the problem is like in an area where we historically have not had a notary at all, or we have had few notaries, it would then be even harder to get a notary to begin with. But maybe I'm misunderstanding how the calculation score would happen. I do think that it's interesting to say, let's like make sure there is abundant and sufficient data cap in regions where there is like high client demand and network power. But again, to your point of like the number of LDNs with the amount of untapped data cap at LDNs, and those LDNs are not necessarily restricted by region or by notary. So I feel like this is sort of taken care of by that LDN process. So maybe I'm missing something, and I would love to hear from some other people.
Yeah, I think the reason this was flagged was actually because like it's coming from the perspective of data cap utilization rather than data cap presence, where the argument being made is like data cap should be made available in regions where there's ability to onboard deal making at a large scale. And specifically, it brings in this angle of, well, my assumption is that we're thinking about things like snap deals and network changes that enable people with relative high power today to take on like massive amount of deals down the line. Actually, as you were talking, Galen, I think I'm trying to change my mind because I think that one of the flaws with this proposal is that it doesn't take into account the fact that like deals themselves are being distributed across different regions. And as we get better as a community at doing that and pushing that as a best practice across clients. So I'd be very interested in hearing from those of you that are doing a bunch of business development and working with clients that are bringing into the network. But my general understanding is that like a best practice that we often push is get copies up of your data in multiple regions, like get different storage providers that are working in different continents to get data. That's something that I've espoused, especially on where I've worked with clients. And if that's true, then I don't actually think this makes a difference because I think that like data cap should just be made available everywhere. And this is, for me, this is almost like saying, let's just ensure there's like a certain like floor of data cap available everywhere. And then like ensure that there's like somewhat proportionate, kind of how we made in the past where like North America, Europe, China ended up having a little bit more data cap, but that was also a factor of like there being more notaries in those regions. With LDN, I think these things start to matter less, and it becomes more about ensuring that notaries that are working in those regions feel empowered and are able to deliver what they want to deliver. But yeah, would be especially interested in hearing from those of you who have been working with other clients.
Yeah, from my point, from that one thinking like, first of all, there are two different things. The network power and the File Plus are totally different things. The purpose of File Plus is for lending data. It's not for like growing bigger and bigger about the raw power. So that's two different things, which means that it's irrelevant. For me, it's irrelevant, the two cases, the distribution of the power and the data cap. So for this one, it doesn't make sense. Secondary, from the system level, if we're doing the distribution according to the power distribution, which means that the bigger one will become bigger, smaller one have no chance. So it doesn't make sense either. So based on 2 points, I cannot agree with this proposal.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I'll probably respond in the discussion after this call with a quick summary of that as well, because I think generally, actually, if this feels like a limit, then that's probably something we're not communicating correctly in the public documentation around Filecoin Plus. So maybe this is also like a growth opportunity for best practices for existing clients and for net new clients in the network, where finding a storage provider to work with is not, I don't know if like identifying their current power is ever part of the equation for finding a storage provider to work with. And that could be both a good and a bad thing, where I think that on one hand, it means that we need to do a better job educating people about reputation. And of course, current power has an influence on that. But on the other hand, like if you're a storage provider that has been around for several months or years, has done significant amount of deals, but have relatively low power in a region compared to other storage providers, I don't think that makes you less qualified to work with a client. And so getting more data cap in the region that you're operating with or not operating in also just doesn't make sense then. So actually, to summarize a little bit, it feels like the qualms with this proposal are that it aligns data cap availability with storage provider power, as opposed to with like client locations or notary locations or ideal storage locations for clients, which is the wrong way to go, because that's exactly how we want data cap to function, is to empower clients to make the deals that they need to be successful on the network. Is that fair?
Yeah, I agree.
Cool.
Same here.
Okay, I think we should move on to the next.
Galen, I think this was your touch point. Do you want to kick us off on this?
Yeah, I was actually going to see, I think we have Bruce here from Seal Storage, and that team submitted this issue. There had been a number of members from the Seal team came and talked a couple of weeks ago at a Notary Governance call and sort of introduced this proof of concept. And so we'd love to sort of hear from your team as to like where you're at.
Hey guys, how are you? Yeah, so we have engaged further with our customer. They are a substantially sized scientific research organization. We're still in the very early stages of building that relationship out. And as a result of that, as you can imagine in that situation, they're hesitant to kind of come forward with their identity at this point. We have a proof of concept with them that is around 10 petabytes. And they're eager to move forward. We're looking to start mining immediately as soon as we can secure a data cap for this. There is substantially more data that's available from this organization. And certainly from the perspective of, trying to store the world's most important data, this would fall in line with storing the world's most important scientific data. So we're looking to establish data cap so that we can then go out and finalize storage deals with the other vendors, storage providers who will be storing other copies. Happy to take any questions that I can answer.
And maybe just a quick tidbit, Jacques Warrepel, CTO of Seal here. The reason the POC, hi. The reason they're so keen to work on the POC, because as a science organization, they have a lot of data that they have on tape as well, and they can't do the financial justification of keeping that data on disk. So they're always kind of shuffling data between what they have on disk, but then they have a massive pool of tapes out there. But with the unique kind of value proposition with Filecoin, we can kind of subsidize the cost of storage because of the block rewards we get. They are really keen on that use case to kind of drive things forward. So this is like a really important use case for the network. It's just right now, because of the size and who they are, the sensitivity going public, that they are looking at the blockchain technology for their organization. But once we prove that it works, it changes everything. But we got to get to the proof of concept.
Yeah, the one other thing I would add to that is we should see this organization as a gateway into that whole scientific community, of which there are literally exabytes of data available for us to store.
Yeah, super exciting. I think last time we spoke, there was one clarifying question around encrypted versus unencrypted. And as far as I remember it, it is unencrypted data. It's just that right now the client themselves want to remain private, but the data would be public and other people could do retrieval deals on those data sets. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, so it's very likely that at least some of that data set will be encrypted. Again, this is very highly sensitive scientific data. There are public data sets that obviously in those situations will remain unencrypted. But I do think we have to make allowances for the situation where there's a substantial sensitivity around data sets, and folks want to retain that, retain privacy to that.
Okay. As it is right now,
and just one more additional thing to that. In terms of other people being able to do retrieval deals, for that sensitive data, the client for those retrievals would most likely be that organization or its partners, who would have access to the encryption keys, and therefore there would still be absolute value in doing retrieval deals for their storage partners, even if they cannot themselves see or verify that data. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Historically, the large data sets have been a requirement that they are open and public and unencrypted for the standpoint of, you know, proof of data and that enterprise level amount of data cap. Julian, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that usually it's what we call, like, I mean, in my standpoint, like valuable data for humanity are usually public data and accessible by everybody. So
sure, understand the perspective, but I do think, and you know, I think this is an opportunity for the ecosystem to you know, to do its own proof of concept on the, you know, the possibility that there are going to be data sets that are massively important to humanity, but are not public, right? So I think the first organization that cures whatever form of cancer is probably going to want to hold on to its IP. But I don't think it can be argued that that would not be important for humanity. So I think this is probably a crossover point or an inflection point for the ecosystem to model some kind of mechanism that allows for, yes, some verification system to make sure that this is not junk data, but also making allowances for some kind of privacy. As I said before, within this data set, there will be subsets that are public. There are public data sets right now from this organization, but you know, those are subsets, and we should make allowances to store all of that data because it is important.
Let's hear from Eric. I see a hand.
Hi, Bruce. This is Eric from Petabyte.
How are you, Eric?
Hi, Sam. I'm going to ask 2 questions. So according to the law in China, because we know if you have you got a data center or you have the steel, which is the you have the data which is stored by your client. So do you have any authorizations to keep those data into the Filecoin?
Yes, the client is very aware of the Filecoin ecosystem. We have discussed the value proposition of the Filecoin ecosystem with the client. So they are very aware that their data will be stored within the Filecoin ecosystem.
So any authorization letters or any approved document by your client which store your data in your system?
I'm sorry, I'm not quite understanding the question.
Well, we do have a proof of concept document signed between ourselves and the customer, and like everything as far as storing their data, and you know, the data sets that are open is going to be unencrypted. For data that is sensitive, they are going to encrypt it, and they'll retain the encryption key. All that's been laid out in a signed POC document we have with the customer.
Okay, clear, understand. And I also had reviewed with your applications that also you guys have 40 PBs, right? That's a huge data.
Yeah, so it's the well, to kind of give you a feel for how big the customer, because we asked them, you know, we want to do a POC, you know, we want to start with something small, and they gave us 10 petabytes. And of course, we don't want to store one copy of it. We got to show the capability of the network, and we want to, you know, give some data to some of the other storage providers in the network. So yeah, so the application is for 40 because it's 4 copies of 10.
Okay, I understand. So the second question is, so do you accept the deal from China? Because we have a lot of storage provider in China, so they would like to keep the data for you.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you know, we are keeping our options open as to where the data will be stored. Ultimately, that'll be the client's choice. What I will say about this organization is that they do have global partners. And one of the value props that we have sold to them is the possibility of storing copies of this data in proximity to where there is the largest subset of their partners, so that retrieval will be easier, lower latency. If the organization indicates that there is a large footprint in China or in that part of the world for their research partners, and they are in agreement, then there's no reason why we wouldn't consider a Chinese copy.
Okay, I understand. So you can reach me on the Slack if you would like to keep the data in China. I would like to introduce the storage provider for you.
Sure.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Charles?
Yeah, I have a few questions. If I'm not misunderstanding, the data is encrypted, right?
Parts of it will be, parts of it will not be.
Okay, great. So like from the governance point, the part which is encrypted is not eligible. The part is decrypted is eligible. That's number one rule for the part. Or we already changed the rule. If I said no, that's the rule. Okay, but I know that there's Gravity project for encrypted data. So it will be 1 terabyte with 1 Filecoin, or 100 terabytes for 100 Filecoin, but it won't be verified data. There will be like a regular deal. You can reach to the parties who are in charge to get those approval. Yeah, this is something I know. And I don't have any other questions, and it's just something I know from the governance part. And also like on how to doing the encryption files as a verified deals has been a long discussion. As far as I know, we don't have any answer to that question yet. If there is, please let me know. I'm also interested to know.
Yeah. So as far as the your first comment, as I said before, I would challenge the ecosystem to review the notion that the only data that qualifies for Fil Plus is data that's publicly accessible. What we're essentially doing at that point is excluding massive amounts of data that some subset of the world would consider important and confidential.
I'll ask one question for that. Are people paying for store those encrypted data?
Pardon me?
As a client, where the client pay for the storage of the encrypted data?
So, I mean, at the moment we're doing a proof of concept, so there's no cost involved to the client as far as the proof of concept goes. Longer term, if we turn this into a business model with the customer, I mean, the business case would be, they have X amount of storage on tape, and it kind of takes time and resources to move stuff between tape and disk. There's a use case where we can start billing them for the actual, on top of the block rewards we make on the network, also actually charge them for the actual capacity they use on the network.
So basically, they are paying for the storage in the future, right? But not now.
But potentially,
well,
that's not been determined yet.
Yeah, that hasn't been determined yet. We haven't had any commercial conversations with a customer about that.
Yeah. Okay. So for the proof of concept, actually, like 100 terabytes for the 100 Filecoin should be okay for proof of concept, because you're not limited by multi-miners or something like that. Just proof of concept. And 100 terabytes data should be fine enough.
It's not 100 terabytes. It's 100 petabytes.
Yeah, the proof of concept is 10 petabytes, and then the customer has almost an exabyte eventually that we want to process. So the proof of concept is 10 petabytes.
And let me just add to that. In addition to the data that the customer currently has, they are consistently generating new data. So this is a gift that keeps giving. And as I said earlier in the discussion, this organization is a leader in its field. And therefore, at the point where we are able to make public, and there will be such a point, that there's a partnership between Filecoin and this organization, there are other organizations that are going to be lining up to be a part of that storage deal.
Understood.
So
but if we mention about X byte, you know how much power we have now in the system? We have only 15 X byte. So if you add this one or by verified data, it become almost half of the entire network power, which means that this is a huge impact about the entire ecosystem, which means that I suggest it should be an independent topic. Instead of putting it in the File Plus, it should be an independent topic or independent project. It's worth it to set up an independent project for this proposal only, instead of like to think about should be fit in the File Plus. It should be independent proposal because it's too big.
Well, again, you know, I think that the ambition of the Filecoin ecosystem is to grow the storage footprint that it has and to store the most important data on the planet. If that is the ambition of the organization, then we should not be saying about any data set, this is too big. We should be welcoming as much storage as we can possibly get onto the network. We currently have, you know, large amounts of data that are storing CCs. We are providing an opportunity to convert a lot of those CC sectors into useful data. There should be nothing wrong with that.
We didn't say it's wrong. We just say that we are not there yet, because we still have lots of issues with the existing system about the governance of the data set. We need to solve those issues. Even with the public data set, we still have lots of governance issues. Before we solve those ones, I don't think it's a good time to rushing to encrypted data.
So Charles, let's take this one step at a time, right? Yeah. There are exabytes of data to be stored. There is no guarantee that we're going to get those exabytes. What we're talking about in this specific situation is 10 petabytes of data. So I would suggest that we limit the size and scope of this to what we currently have in front of us, and that we put our best foot forward as an ecosystem to welcome this data, to distribute this data, to show the value proposition of this data, and to use this exercise as, like I said, a proof of concept to challenge our assumptions about how we govern data sets in the future and how we store data, right? I agree with you that there are several ways in which, as an ecosystem, we are fledgling and we're not ready for that kind of scale. But the only way to get ready for it is to get ready for it. And the only way to get ready for it is to get your hands in, get dirty, and figure out the issues and find solutions around them, right? Starting with smaller data sets like 10 petabytes.
I don't think 10 petabytes is a small data set, honestly.
And generally speaking, I would agree with you. This organization, on the other hand, this is, you know, a very small.
Yeah, honestly, in my point, personally, I more care about the data quality instead of quantity. There's a lot of storage projects, they get a very good reputation because they saved good data. So we would like to first check about the data capability. Project Gravity is really a good place to start. I don't believe 10 petabyte only 10 petabyte data can show the good use of the case. If the data is good for use with 10 petabyte, if there's some sample test, it should be also good with start with 100 terabytes. If we're just talking about use case, I don't believe that there's some test case only can running on 10 petabyte. remember, we are using HDD. We are not SSD. If you're talking about machine learning or whatever it is, nobody going to run machine learning on 100 petabyte HDD data. I'm honest. Okay, by the way, we are from Nebula AI. We are doing AI machine learning as well. So we're working with those companies. We know that.
Well, I didn't say anything about machine learning, but my question is, what is it that makes 100 terabytes suitable for a proof of concept, but not 10 petabytes?
Hey guys, I'm not. Did you consider asking for a grant at the Filecoin Foundation to just store the data unverified and get your cost covered, and take that as a learning curve and do the encrypted data with the grant, and do the unencrypted data without the grant in the Filecoin Plus program, to store that data, the encrypted data, you can contact the Filecoin Foundation, perhaps sign an NDA with them and give them some insight about the data you are considering to store.
We actually have an NDA with Protocol Labs and the foundation.
When they are in favor, you can ask for a grant to get that stored, and then you can store it unverified, and you don't need to Fil Plus program. There are other ways to get your data on the network. It doesn't need to be in a verified deal always. You can just store it unverified. Let's say it's one set or something, and get your cost covered another way. You can ask a grant for that. Don't need to alter the rules in this program for this case.
So we have taken the step to sign an NDA with the foundation and with Protocol Labs. So there are people on this call. Deep, I believe you were on the. No, I can't quite remember if you were, but certainly there are other members.
Others, yeah, I was
of the organization that have been exposed to that organization. And with whom we can absolutely take any kind of verification steps that need to be taken about the organization and the integrity of the data. In other words, Filecoin Foundation and Protocol Labs are in the position to verify the efficacy of the data. I'm still trying to understand what the limitations around.
I'd like to chat. I know we're running a little bit out of time, so just want to add a couple of things here. Thanks, guys, for very productive conversation on this. I think the first thing I want to flag is that in general, like the Filecoin Plus community yet has not built a large-scale solution for bringing on like private and encrypted data, but we've had several small-scale ideas that have been proposed. There's been like an open discussion topic for a long time. And in general, at least there was a period at which the community felt like this was something we wanted to do. And it seems like maybe today we're still a little bit tentative on whether or not it's something that we're ready to support. But in general, in the past, it's been that like either people go to notaries directly, and we had examples of notaries who were willing to take sample data as through like courier or offline ways in which they could access them. There's also a proposal from Meg, who's the notary from Holon, who suggested that we use IPFS as an idea, where you basically upload data to IPFS, look at the CID, give somebody encryption, like give some set of notaries of Filecoin Plus the encryption key, so they can decrypt the data, look at it, and then see the same CIDs being used in deals on Filecoin. So there are a couple of ways that you can go about it. Like we have seen people go about storing encrypted data. The interesting thing is it's not been done at this scale, and it's not been done using the LDN stuff. It's typically been done when individual notaries have been contracted. I do also want to add that we have had LDNs with encrypted data. A good example of this is the Shoah Foundation, where like some of their data was requested by the people that they interviewed as part of the archive to not be opened up to the world and only to be used for research purposes. And so that's an interesting distinction that might be good to hear about from your end, Bruce, because from that perspective, like it is encrypted, but it's encrypted because it was the wish of the people where the primary research was conducted, which is different than its private IP, and therefore like disproportionately beneficial for like a nonprofit archival institution versus like a scientific research institution that might have that might be funded in different ways. And so if there's like grants driving it, then it'd be great to hear about like how it is still a public good, because I think that's where there's some gray area that we still need to figure out like where the community lands on. And in general, like I do think that like we have to figure out like at the magnitude that you're suggesting, I didn't realize it was that much more. I think Charles's point that it's like a substantive portion of where the network's at today is a pretty interesting one as well, because I think it does have some cryptoeconomic consequences. And so it would be good to get some opinions on that side, but that can be done. I think we can loop in a couple of folks separately to come chat with us in a discussion on that one. But yeah, if you have any information on the general funding.
I can really quickly speak to that. And again, I'm limited based on our own NDAs with the organization. What I can say about them is that they are not a private enterprise. They are a scientific community that in many cases has government funding. And so this is not a situation where we're talking about, and I'm just going to pull a name, Pfizer, where they're storing, drug IP or something like that. This is an organization that is funded at least in part by governments. However, we have not been given any indication that the data sets in question are at this stage, in the research that they're doing, ready to be made public, and that has to be driven by the client. So I don't know if that answers your question, Deep.
I think we want to pause here. Let's get Julian's question really quick and see if we have a short answer, because there are two other things to try and hit before we run out of time. Julian?
Yeah, I was typing my question, but the thing is, like, I think in the past we said, like, you guys, I mean, PL and Filecoin Foundation, you have some ideas on what is the economic impact of adding additional data cap and how much data cap we can add to the network safely. So I think it would be good to get the perspective of what is this 10 PIB are against how much data cap we can add in the coming, I don't know, 6 months or 12 months, to understand what, like, if it's like 25% of what we can add, it's quite huge compared to the other projects. So I think it would be good just to get these figures in mind, so we could like make the decision if we support or not, or if it's too big and we should reduce that one.
Yeah, these are all like really great points. I think the same kind of sticky wickets are coming up again that came up the very first time we heard from the team about this project, which is around the overall size that we're talking and how much would want to be like onboarded at a time. I think that the community has consistently tried to have a ceiling and a scaling allocation plan. And so there is that is a pushback point, is just the scale compared to other projects and compared to the network overall. There's the question around encrypted versus unencrypted, and how from a large data set standpoint, we can safely and confidently support encrypted data. And then there's a question around storage provider distribution, and how in the governance and Filecoin Plus verification program are we going to support distribution to other storage providers. So I think those have been kind of the ongoing like 3 questions. And we've heard some like really great back and forth about those, but I think those are going to be the places where we'll want to sort of continue to refine this conversation to get to a proof of concept that works for the client, works for Seal, and also works for the broad community and the concerns that are raised like here, because yes, we do want to push all of this forward. There are precedent concerns, there are crypto economic concerns, there are network threat risk concerns that all have to be taken into consideration. So there is a reason that the community has these pushbacks, and this is like exactly why we want to have this kind of great decentralized conversation. So I am going to need to kind of wrap up this conversation for today. Jacques and Bruce, thank you so much for presenting, for bearing with us as we push back on this. I think that it is an ongoing process, and I love the amount of dialogue and the back and forth that we're having here. I think we can take some of these conversations async into the GitHub application issue and hear more there, and then we can continue having some further live conversations, and maybe we need to schedule a specific time to have an hour devoted specifically to this. But at this point, I do want to kick it back to K-Ray. There were a couple community discussion posts that I wanted to get to. Sorry, Eric. Let's hit these, and then we can come back to this conversation.
Thanks, Galen. I'll make this quick. So we had two things I wanted to get on the community's radar on this call and next. The first, I'm looking for a thumbs up or thumbs down approval. We had two notary applications. The individuals filing had personal situations. They reached out to us, and then they filed after the deadline. We feel that because they reached out, and this was like not just laziness, but they had a personal situation, that we would like to accept these applications. We wanted to give the community a chance to weigh in with thoughts. Or if you're just like, hey, sometimes people have issues, we're okay, they got it in after the deadline, everything works. So if you're thumbs up, let us know if you have any other kind of feedback, or you don't think that we should let those individuals in. You can either do a thumbs down, unmute, and we could talk about it. If you're good to go, we could just thumbs up, and we'll kind of take a minute for this.
Can you see my thumbs up? I'm not sure.
Yeah, Wynan, I saw your thumbs up, and I put in the chat as well. These are returning notaries, and so
yeah, this is Andrew, right?
Yeah, one of them is textile.
Andrew's cool.
I think it's better to not gatekeep, is my general opinion. Like, we should set guidelines. I just don't like the idea of having slippery slopes where we just continue adding people. So maybe a learning here is that we set the deadline on a Sunday instead of a Friday in the future or something like that. So there's a buffer. But yeah, I'm of the opinion that we should be supportive.
If anybody else has strong conviction, please message me in a DM and we could talk about it and go forward. Given the thumbs up, I think we'll just take that as the baseline, but we'll keep it open. The last and final thing is we had a member of the community, Alexandre, who floated the helpers. Alexandre, since he's not on the call, maybe he'll be here at the 4 o'clock and we can kind of get some more information from that. So since we're over time, we'll delay that to the 4 o'clock to discuss. Pending any other issues from the community, we'll hold for just 1 minute if there was any new business that was urgent that you would like to flag.
Deep has the Slack thread going for that. Eric, did you have a question for SEAL team?
Yes. Sorry, not for SEAL team. Because I only would like to ask. So we found a lot of applications with the needs the KYCs, and due diligence also. So what is the criteria with the communities for the KYC did with the client? So I found a lot of notaries have their each criteria, and so will there be a same?
Are you asking about the large data sets or about the direct notary client application?
Yes, that's correct.
Which one? The large data sets?
Yeah, I found, because I was checking with a lot of the applications. So I think a few of them would like to ask, so did you have the KYCs, or how did you prove yourself, or something like that? So also I would like to ask, so any individual notary would like their own KYC system, or we will have the same? So no matter who is coming from the community, ask for KYC, so we will keep the same standard.
I think it's a pretty good idea.
Go ahead, Deep.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's worth, Eric, I would suggest you just open a discussion on this exact topic and then propose what you think is the baseline KYC, and let's kick it off there. I I think it's a pretty solid idea. At the very least, it'll help educate new notaries. That's like the worst case scenario. If nobody wants to do it, at least the new ones will learn. So I still think it's worth, if you have a few minutes, just to open a discussion and put in your version of what do you think baseline KYC is, and let's talk there. I think in general, moving towards more standards will reduce overhead and increase quality of experience for clients. So I am super supportive of this.
Okay, actually, I don't have any idea about it, so I'm just ask, or maybe I will post it on the Notary channel later,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
get everybody to discuss this.
sounds great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay,
That's
thank you.
one thing. Like when sounds like when notaries was apply for the position, I remember there was a session about how do doing the due diligence. So for this question, we can check their original application to see what they are mentioned about how they are doing the due diligence and the KYC, and see if they follow their own standard before we publish a public standard. Like at least they should follow what they said, right?
Yeah, that is part of the application. You are correct. That is a useful place to go back to, and that is something we look at for returning notary applications. It is something that we've also been discussing, coming up with some regional aligned standards and kind of a best practice KYC process for notaries to use directly. But thanks, everybody. We are over time. This was a really fantastic discussion. Thank you for staying late. Thank you for joining the call. This will get posted up on YouTube. Thanks, K-Ray, for running it. Appreciate everybody's time, and there'll be another one later this afternoon. So.
All right, stop the harsh language, put down those cups. All right, we are at the afternoon session for the Filecoin Plus Notary Governance meeting on March 8th, 2022. Wow, it still feels weird to say that. All right, let's take a look. It's good. If you're watching on YouTube, this is the second part of the agenda. We covered these metrics in the morning, but just in case, the high level that we're going to talk about on this meeting, for those of you just joining us live, is an overview of anybody new on the call. I don't see any new faces, so we'll skip right over that. A quick check-in on metrics and what we're looking at in the time to data cap. Talking a little bit about the activity going on with notaries, how many issues we have open on LDNs, and then spend a little bit of time on the 3 issues that came through in the repo regarding locations and time, and then large data sets. And then we also save time at the end for some just general topics that were flagged in the community. That could be the helpers team or some people that were turning in their applications late. So with that, let's take a and I'm joined with Galen and Deep. We are your friendly helpers here on the Filecoin Plus team. And if this is your first time, we're going to skip it because we would see you on the call and you're not here. So we're all very familiar faces. So metrics. What we're looking at right now is that we're still on par. You guys have been on this call many times. If you're watching, you saw the morning we called this out. I think what I would tell you guys now on the call live is we haven't seen any big drop-offs and we haven't seen any rapid improvement. So after this election, what we're really making a benchmark is how do we speed this process up and make it so people that want data cap can get it as quickly as possible without any roadblocks, or as little roadblocks as possible. So the big call out here is that there's no dramatic things to call out. Time to data cap, time to first response are all relatively in line with where we've been for pretty much the last 8 months. When you look at the network size, what I would call out if you haven't seen this stat is that Filecoin Plus is a very large part of the Filecoin network. And this slide talks to that fact. If you take a look, we're 56% of all the active deals and 65% of active deal counts. So we are pretty much the largest participant as we go through. So props, back, high fives, whatever we say with that. So right on to the activity. This is why we're here, right? Okay, so the first thing is we have 9 open issues that we pulled from the large data sets. So if you were keen to go and make any approvals or you got any pings, these were the 9. Thank you so much. This number was in the high 20s back around Chinese New Year and around the Christmas holiday here in the States. So we've seen a lot of that drop off if we worked through the slingshot, and it's good to see. Essentially, we're making progress. So if you see one of these 9, feel free to go in and add your signature line. With the elections, we have finished the application period as of Friday. What we're doing now is we're setting up all the parameters for scoring. So the applications that we received were 60. So a really healthy count. Excited about that number because the more high quality notaries we can bring on the system, the more we can spread this load out and just make that as fast as possible for that time to first date and approval. What we're doing now, me being Galen, Deep, myself, a couple people that we roped in on the foundation side, is we're looking at all the applications in this scoring period, and we're verifying the data to make sure that there's no questions, nothing outstanding, and then assigning it to one of those L1, 2, 3, 4, 5 categories. So this is going to take place for the next 2 weeks. The call out that I would say is if there was anything additional that we may need, we'll just Slack you or GitHub like, hey, we must be missing this. But those of you on the call, I don't think that's going to be too much of an issue. If you did watch this on YouTube and skipped ahead, that's just coming as we do it this week. What we're doing in that application process is taking everything from the GitHub repository and slotting that in. So all of you on the call have seen this before. I won't spend too much time since we covered this in the morning session. Feel free to go back and watch that portion of the video for how we assign those numbers. So saving time, and this is where we spent the majority of our time in the morning session, was talking about these 4 open issues. So I'm going to pass it off to Deep, and we're going to take the first conversation that came in from Fat Man over a GitHub ticket. And it was essentially, how are we looking at the geolocations for scoring? And then how do we remove that limit if we do that at all? So Deep, would you like to kind of handle this?
Yeah, I don't think Yu's on the call at the moment. And so I'll do my best to represent the issue as well as the conversation that was had in the morning. And then would love to hear from those of you that are here live, or if you're watching the recording, head over to GitHub and participate in the discussion then. But the topic of conversation here is basically that we generally increase the number of notaries and remove the geographic limit that exists. And so for those of you that aren't as familiar with the process or haven't participated in a notary election cycle before, this basically just means that like when we go through notary elections today, we group them, like when a notary applies, you sort of self-select into a region of operation, and then we group them based on region of operation, rank them, and then pick the top N of each region. And so we've had cutoffs at 5 or 7 notaries per region of operation in the past. And this issue or this discussion is basically the idea of like trying to get more notaries on the table and also remove the geographical limit. And so the conversation this morning was around like dividing up these 2 different sort of goals, increasing the total number of notaries, removing the geographic limit, and addressing each of them separately. For the first part, I think everybody was sort of in agreement that like getting more notaries on board is a general goal that everyone is aligned on. It would be great to have more people participate in discussions, participate in the community, help verify clients, and generally improve the client experience by bringing on people that are familiar with the tooling, familiar with the process, can help with education, but most importantly, help with faster verification for clients to get them onboarded onto the network. So we spent a majority of the time actually talking about the second case, where we talked a little bit about the usefulness of having notaries that are coming from different geographies and why it's important to have that. And so the discussion was centered around why we had the regional limit in the first place. And the idea there was basically that we ensure we have notaries that are coming in from different locations that aren't being shut out because they'll never like hit the ranking because they can't compete with people who have been part of the network for much longer or have a much higher stake and therefore win out on the rubric. And so it's to ensure that there's like a sense of decentralization and distribution of presence of power as it relates to notaries and their ability to like have leverage in the network as important stakeholders, but also that there's a benefit served by having experts that are experts in like geopolitical regional areas. So they understand the regulation, understand business, understand language, and can serve clients, especially those who may not have like English as their first language and are interested in working with somebody to onboard onto the network. And so please forgive me if I'm misrepresenting for those of you that were there in the morning, but TLDR of the morning discussion is that effectively that aligned on trying to get more notaries, but still makes sense to have the geo distribution because it gives signals in terms of like where we have presence as Filecoin Plus and where we can support clients. And so continuing to have the geographic limit makes sense in order to ensure that we're not over capped or over invested in one region versus another, because it's unlikely that everybody applying will become a notary, but generally upping should hopefully address some of where this issue is coming from, which is that perhaps like certain people that would have served as very active notaries didn't get a chance to. I think other issues that have been put through the rubric in the last maybe a month or so will probably do a better job in addressing this, at least in the immediate next election cycle. So like focusing a little bit more on engagement level, as well as other parameters that help differentiate a notary, regardless of whether or not they're just like a big company that has a lot of money or are really interested in Filecoin because they're a big storage provider operation. And so I think tackling this from like angles of increasing diversity in the type of notary that's serving the network is probably a better way to go, rather than removing or directly dealing with like the geographical boundary as like a inhibitor or mechanism to select a notary. Any other follow-ups on that particular one? Even if you were there in the morning and want to add anything to that, or if you have a fresh opinion to share, or those of you that are hearing this for the first time, if you agree, disagree, we'd love to hear it. Okay, that was a 2-sip break, and so I'm going to assume that we're good to go on that one. I'm going to follow up with just notes on the discussion for the conversation. And Kerry, if you don't mind, I can hop into the next issue as well. Cool. Second issue from Fadman on looking at power distribution instead of geographic distribution. And so this one we spent a little bit more time on. I think there were a lot of opinions that came in for this, where the discussion is basically around ensuring that data cap is reaching regions where it can actually be used. And so instead of making data cap available based on its current availability in a region, instead like make it proportional to power. And so effectively regions that have large amounts of storage providers should also have large amounts of data cap, because the assumption is that we need supply in order to supply demand in those regions. And so I think the conversation changed a fair bit, but I think the final sort of takeaway from this morning's session was that this unfortunately aligns the incentives of the Filecoin Plus like program and overall like data cap availability to the presence of storage providers, which is ultimately not necessarily correct because of a few reasons, some of which are: one, the main thing driving the usage of data cap is actually client demand, not supply. And so we should be anchoring based on ensuring clients have the experience that they need and their needs are met. So their requirements when it comes to onboarding something onto the network is actually available to them, and they're able to do that and work with the storage providers of their choice, as opposed to just storage providers that have presence in the network. Two, clients are incentivized today to distribute their data across multiple storage providers and actually across multiple regions as well. Of course, there are some cases in which the data itself cannot leave a region, but in many cases, people are looking at distributing data like across continents to ensure that there's availability of it in different places around the world. And so in that case, power distribution also doesn't matter, because a client would just be deciding to work with ideally high reputation storage providers that they're interested in having partnerships with or can trust with their data and deal making across the world effectively. And so the crux of this issue is effectively just that, like, let's just make sure there's enough data cap available in the regions where there's a lot of supply and ideally in the future a lot of demand. And I think one of the big ways in this gets addressed actually is that effectively the large data set notary path is where we're seeing a majority of data cap coming in, going to clients and being used. In fact, like right now, Filecoin Plus is 20-ish petabytes of deal-made data done, of which, direct notaries had a max of 8 petabytes to begin with. So we've already more than doubled and eclipsed sort of where the individual verification path exists, and it's becoming much more focused on ensuring clients that are coming in at large scale are supported. There's multiple notaries like having their opinions in the mix. A lot of people sharing the responsibility of due diligence and holding clients to a higher bar. And so I actually think that, like, my opinion of it is that I don't think we actually need to do this. I think it's good feedback in terms of thinking about, like, turning another eye towards analytics and generally paying a little bit more attention towards like how data cap is being used, what the presence of Filecoin Plus is, what the presence and utilization of data cap from clients is. But ultimately, assigning a data cap number based on power does not seem like the right sort of dependency to draw. However, I mean, using here to represent that, so sorry, but we'd love to engage you on GitHub. But yeah, again, those of you that are here live, any thoughts, any reactions to that, please feel free to share. Wow. Smooth sailing. Yeah, I think for both of these, then what I'm going to do is I'll just summarize literally exactly what I said. I'll put it in the GitHub discussion. But again, inviting you all to engage on GitHub directly. Always great to continue having conversation on these topics. Even if it turns out, the discussion stuff may not change policy in the Fil Plus world, it's still helpful in ensuring that we're checking our assumptions, we're aligned as a community, sort of headed in the right direction, but also just pushing our own patterns and practices in a way that we stay current with the needs of the network, the needs of clients entering the network, and generally are building a platform where people can be set up for productivity and success on Filecoin. So yeah, +1, thank you, Fatman, for continuing to push the conversation. You're probably watching this recording. You popped up in a couple of different places. So really appreciate your ongoing commitment to ensuring that the Filecoin Plus program is continuing to improve. And we're able to engage on a variety of different topics, both in the Fil Plus governance side of things, but also in the general FIP and overall program structure and efficiency. So shout out, thanks for doing great work.
Yes.
And actually, if we don't mind switching the order, Pooja just popped in. It'd be great if we could do the DGM stuff, and then we can pop over to Bruce.
Okay, sorry, Bruce. We'll pop back to Bruce.
Yeah, Bruce's topic could go on for a little longer, so in the interest of scoping it correctly, yeah. Hey, Pooja, is that
awesome.
okay?
Hey, yes, that sounds great. Thanks for adjusting the flow. Hey, everyone. So yeah, I just wanted to just briefly pop in real quick. I think a number of the folks here may be aware that we recently launched a new website, which is called DGM. It's at dgm.xyz is the URL, which has a number of different grants for projects that, starting with projects within the Filecoin ecosystem that we are interested in funding. And one of the ones that I wanted to talk about, I think, which is particularly relevant for the Filecoin Plus community, is this grant. I will screen share as well, but this is the link to it. And I think for folks who are watching on the recording, it's called Dedicated Petabyte Scale Client Onboarding. But I know a number of storage providers and folks who are within kind of the Filecoin Plus ecosystem are working to bring many very large clients into the Filecoin ecosystem and sort of going through all of the steps of actually educating them about the benefits of Filecoin, helping to understand, what is their actual use case and the actual data set, and then actually, figuring out what the process would look like to prepare that data set for storage on Filecoin, and then actually working with the client to go through all the steps and actually get that data onboarded. So I think, we recognize that a number of folks, specifically within the Filecoin Plus community, have some really deep expertise and knowledge here and are doing this work of effectively what we within Protocol Labs and Filecoin Foundation, et cetera, have been calling solutions architect sort of work. And so we wanted to basically put a grant out for folks who are already engaged in this process of working with clients, large scale, petabyte scale clients, to onboard their data sets onto Filecoin, and then just sort of supporting you in that process. Or if you're not already doing that, but have interest and appetite in going through this process, then supporting you with a grant to do that. And so some of the big components here are basically, finding a client that has at least 1 petabyte of data in terms of just the unique data in their data set, and working with them to kind of structure a plan, helping to kind of do a test with a smaller proof of concept to make sure that the plan will work for the larger data set, and then ultimately onboarding that full data set. And I think honestly, it's if you're already doing this this work with clients, it's actually pretty straightforward because you probably have a lot of the documentation and everything already in process. But if not, it's something, it's an opportunity to create this really valuable set of documentation and case studies and knowledge for our ecosystem so that we can scale this process of bringing petabyte scale clients onto the Filecoin network much more easily down the road. And so, so that's kind of just wanted to make sure that folks knew about this. There's currently 1,000 Filecoin grant associated with this. We're also open to feedback on like, what would make this grant more or less interesting for folks. So definitely feel free to reach out if this is kind of interesting, but not enough to get you over the hump to actually apply. And the application deadline is, this is in my local time zone, which is Eastern time, but it's end of day Pacific on Thursday of this week. So March 10th. So there are a couple more days to apply. And if you have any questions, we are here to help. So that's all I had for now. Thank you.
Awesome. Pooja, where do you want people to reach you if you have any questions?
If you have questions, there is a discussion link in the actual grant. That's probably the best place. Yeah, because that'll take you to like a channel in Filecoin Slack.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing.
Awesome. Thank you.
Any immediate questions for Pooja? Cool. Sounds like you killed it.
Yeah, I have one, Pooja.
Oh, there you go, Meg.
Just a question, is there any flex on that close date for the applications?
Potentially. Are you thinking that it's a little tight for?
Yeah, we're heading to South by Southwest, and just with the whole, I didn't realize it was closing opens for such a short amount of time. Because I think Stefan connected us with you, but only last week, so I didn't realize it was so close.
Yeah, I think if you just take a look, so the application is pretty, is not super intensive. So I think I can just screen share really quickly just so you see what it looks like. But it's basically, just like tell us a little bit about your team. Have you done similar work in the past? What's your approach for this, like general approach for this project? Anything we can do to set you up for success and any potential risks. So I think, yeah, maybe if you can take a look at that and see if that seems like something that y'all will be able to do. I think the bigger thing is just the deadline for the actual milestones, which is sort of like, proof of concept by early May. And then like the full data onboarding, it's like, we're giving 6 months because we know sometimes it can be, there are like all sorts of unforeseen challenges sometimes. So giving more time for that. But yeah, I would recommend trying to get it in by the deadline. This is, we're experimenting with a new flow for doing these types of grants. So we can be a little bit flexible, but I think the application is trying to be pretty low lift. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. If you're worried that it's going to require like a really high bar or something. What do you think?
There's just a lot to read in the rules, and there's a lot. So we'll have a look and see if we can. If not, no worries.
Okay, sounds great. Yeah, and just let me know if if the timing doesn't work for you for whatever reason, as if you do take a look at it before Thursday.
Cool. I guess overdue. Carrie to facilitate the conversation with Galen and Bruce on the open application from Seal. Thanks, Pooja.
Thanks, Pooja. Hello. Thank you. All right, I'll screen share this and I'll put it back up here for you, Deep.
Awesome. As we're getting that screen share back up, a very good conversation happened this morning with the team. Thank you, Bruce and Jacques, for coming back and putting up with us and our notaries again. To sort of summarize and recap, I think this will be, we'll have a shorter conversation here. I encourage people to go watch and listen to that recording. The SEAL team is working on a very interesting proof of concept with the client. We have heard from them in a previous governance call. I think we're still continuing to iterate and talk through some of the current sticking points and what we can push through to support this proof of concept. I think what would be great to just like recap from the team for the people on the call this afternoon would just be sort of the high level proposal of like what SEAL sort of initially is like bringing to the table, just so that people are refreshed on like what this conversation, where the starting point of this conversation is. Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome.
Hey guys.
Thanks, Bruce. I'll kick it to you.
Yeah. Hey guys. Thanks, Gavin. Just wanted to update you guys on that request we made for data cap. It is regarding a very large organization in the scientific community, well known globally, that we've engaged with for some time and are developing a relationship. They have a substantial amount of data to store, and they speak in terms of petabytes as their unit of measure, basically. So when we asked for a small POC with them, they gave us 10 petabytes. And so this is what we're seeking data cap for. Part of the complexity is, again, being a large organization and this being a POC, and the type of science that they do is rather cutting edge. They've asked for privacy around the application process. So we engaged with, as part of the verification process, we engaged with Protocol Labs and the foundation and signed off on an NDA so we could share details about the client with PL and the foundation. And so we do have some dialogue that has happened there. As part of this, the discussions that have happened, we've decided to modify our data cap application. We will be submitting a 5 petabyte application, which we will share with 4 other storage providers, and then we will seek additional data cap for the remainder of the data. Our commitment to this organization is to store at least 4, maybe 5 copies of this data, and of course we want to distribute that globally, not just for the purposes of meeting Filecoin's requirements, but also because this organization has partners all over the world, and providing lower latency access to their data is one of the selling points that we brought to them. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a perfect recap of sort of the state of things, and so we'll kind of keep the community posted on these LDNs. We'll be capturing more of that conversation and sort of the decisions in that GitHub repo for transparency. If there are any sort of immediate questions right now, top of mind for members on the call, we could take those. Otherwise, we have a couple other discussion topics to hit. So just wanted to pause and see. Yeah, go for it, Meg.
Hi, Bruce.
Hey,
We've
Meg.
been having some conversations with you guys around this. Are you a storage provider doing this as a proxy for the client?
Yes, we are a storage provider, and again, due to the nature of the sensitivities involved, we are proxying on behalf of the client.
Right, and so Gregory just went silent on his conversations about the distribution. Should we follow up with him directly, or what are your plans on how you will distribute it?
Yeah, I mean, I know that if you haven't yet received it, there should be an email in your inbox tonight with some further communications in that regard. I saw your email earlier, and we'll be replying to that tonight.
I think you know what we're talking about, like how there were terms of the deal, like you'd be upfront about that in the issue, wouldn't you?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, great. That's all I'm asking for.
Sure.
Cool, that's it.
Awesome, thanks, Meg. And just pause for another second.
Yeah, just want to say that, this is like a pretty epic scale. Really excited to sort of use it as an opportunity to continue important conversations around support for enterprise on Fil Plus and sort of graduating Fil Plus to the next level of supporting the next order of magnitude of workload on Filecoin. So thanks so much, Steel team, for sort of working through this, having the difficult conversations and pushing the community forward as well.
Yeah, totally. And I think, it's just a testament to how much the entire community is really working on trying to get these very large enterprise level clients going, that the presentation immediately before yours was also about how do we onboard, enterprise level clients and get proof of concepts for those things working. So we're coming at this from a lot of angles, which I think is one of the great things about these, decentralized communities. K-Ray, if you want to kick us forward a slide, I think there were two more, yes, just discussion posts there, if you want to hit those.
Yeah, so Meg, anybody else on the line? In the morning session, we just had the thumbs up, thumbs down. We received 2 applications from existing notaries that were after the Friday deadline. They had reached out ahead of time. They had some personal issues. We just wanted to make sure that that was flagged for the community so there was no perception of favoritism or nepotism or whatever isms could be flagged. So we just wanted to do that same thing here in the afternoon session. So they're in GitHub. And if anybody had any issue with the acceptance of an existing notary a little bit late due to a personal issue, you could flag it now. If it was too sensitive, feel free to DM us and we can continue that conversation. We just want to kind of bring that up in a public forum and kind of give it space if anybody had any thoughts on it. Feel free to bring it up in, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that the consensus in the morning was that it's not too much of an issue. I wanted to share sort of my takeaway from it was basically that like we should have some notion of deadlines for these things and sort of stick to them. And so maybe the takeaway is like having a deadline on a Sunday or a Monday instead of a Friday. So it gives people time to react. That's probably like a good next step and a learning for the future. Because last time we had a similar thing happen where a deadline was like a Tuesday and applications came in until Wednesday. And so decision is usually just like, we don't need to gatekeep here too hard. But at the same time, like Notary Elections is a decent amount of work from an operational standpoint. And so constantly receiving applications afterwards is also very, very difficult to sustain.
Well, thank you for the thumbs up in chat, just to kind of put that if someone's watching this, thumbs up. And with that, we had an issue come up in the Fil Plus channel in Slack. It was a proposal for discussion around a helpers concept. We have Alexandria on the line. Would you like to speak to this a little bit? The floor is yours.
Yeah, so hello there. So my idea with the helpers team was more like to help the ecosystem generally with some of the issues we have with sort of the communication and like answering the questions we have people have for specific things that they may have posted on a channel that is not so specific about it, or just like being a theme that can redirect the questions and the issues and everything, and kind of integrate the not only the support teams, but like being I thought of it more like a integrated thing that can help just like connect people and connect answers to questions and to the right people, and trying to like organize some of the channels and some of the things to have a like a better kind of management of the whole support teams and the community and everything. So because what I see right now is that we have a lot of people asking for approvals and signatures and everything on the Slack channel we have, and we only have as I see it, 2 channels, one for the Filecoin Plus, like general things. There's where these asks come from. And there's the dashboards channel. That's not so like there's not so many people there right now. So we have an issue of having an intimate and more personal kind of team members and communication and sort of like building a community. So yeah, that's what I thought about it, and that's and the helpers thing is something I thought myself, and I kind of have taken that initiative, but it can be other things and other ways. That's just the first step towards like sort of managing these issues we have. Yeah, so yeah, that's what I thought for that.
Actually, interesting. So you're basically, it's two things then, right? One is like, shall we manage the community or like use Discord as the place for like communication and general like community building and community engagement? And then the other is introducing the concept of people that are like maybe like more engaged than the average community member and giving them some capacity to do that, or a platform to support the program. Is that a fair interpretation of the two things?
Yeah, it's kind of the two things, but it's I didn't think of it more like only focused on the Filecoin Plus, and we can like expand it to help other projects and other fields and other teams. So it would be like say I have great knowledge for on Filecoin Plus on Filecoin, and then there's someone that knows a lot about IPFS, and another one that knows about P2P, and we kind of have those knowledgeable people, and then they participate on the Discord, but we the team, the helpers team, will not be those knowledge people, only the knowledge people, but we can redirect the questions and issues to those people. So we kind of it's kind of a like a bridge to help manage those kinds of things and have a better better communication channels. So one issue I had, and I posted on a poll on the Slack channel the past week or a couple weeks ago, was around having another channel on Slack for the more management side of Filecoin Plus. Most people agreed to have a separate channel, but there was kind of not of 100% agreement on it, and it kind of got stuck. So that's why I took the initiative and started something just to kind of start, because I think that will help us be more intimate. So like building a real community and really helping and kind of knowing each other better. So yeah, because the way it is now, we have one channel, the Filecoin Plus channel, where most of the people are, and that's just we kind of can't have a conversation there, because you post something and there's some hours later or some minutes later, there's a post for asking for some approvals or anything for that. So I think we have to like separate those things. And yeah.
Alejandra, it's Meg here. How you doing?
Hey there.
We already do have so many channels. Tell me how a separate channel or in a different platform is going to solve some of the turnaround responses. I mean, I'm looking at this File Lobby, there's Enterprise Group, there's Steel Market, File Green, File Help, File Announcements, File Plus, File Notaries. Tell me how will helpers be different to all of these existing ones?
So those channels you said are for Filecoin Plus, they are not only for Filecoin Plus, right? So they're more, they're general for a lot of different things. So yeah, what I didn't thought the helpers team Discord to be only for Filecoin Plus. That's another thing. I thought of it more like integrating the whole ecosystem, not just protocol labs or Filecoin Foundation. But so that's another question, another thing. That's more to help the whole ecosystem, and it will take some time to build that. So yeah, there are just two separate issues. The issue of having an ecosystem team that can support and help and do this kind of work, and there's the issue for Filecoin Plus. The issue I think is more important for us now is the Filecoin Plus issue, where we have one or two channels, and there's not more many conversations there because of those constant interruptions for asking for a lot of things. So I think we don't have to discuss a lot of for the helpers team Discord. That's like a separate another thing, but that's kind of trying to help with the Filecoin Slack issue. I see we have that we cannot have an intimate relationship with each other and know each other and kind of hold conversations without constant interruptions with unrelated things. Yeah, so I think that kind of is an issue for at least for me now. I would like to have a common channel. We can talk about things about Filecoin Plus, things that are not asking or just approving, and so that's what I think we gotta have. If you want success, we gotta have that.
I'd like to add something. I think that Meg, your point is totally fair. There's a lot of places to keep track of already. Like adding more to keep track of is difficult. At the same time, open source, decentralized, distributed community, we can always try things and see what sticks. Alex, I'd say that there's probably 3 options that I would propose to you. One is you go ahead, make a Discord, try and socialize it, and see how it goes, and just give it a shot, and we can see what happens. I think option 2 is the Filecoin Plus channel was originally meant to be more of like a community thing. It just so turned out that it's now bombarded with requests because that's one reliable way to get people's attention. And that's likely to happen regardless of where you create a forum where you can get people's attention. And so maybe just try and use Filecoin Plus channel as what you're describing. So like post more discussion prompts, conversations, more social sort of prompts to see if you're able to turn that into the space that you want it to be. And I think the third option is you basically sort of to survey people and get the data that you want to feel like you have the confidence that it's worth your time. And so I'd say, experiment 1, experiment 2, or go get data. That's what I would that's how I feel listening to you talk. And I kind of agree with Meg that like, I think it'll be difficult to pitch getting even more places. But at the same time, if you find that there's a value prop or turns out you do it, everybody shows up, everybody loves it, then great. Like I'm sure the rest of us will get used to it. I'll certainly be there if you want to run an experiment in either location.
Yeah, the Discord server will continue existing, but the main thing I wanted to get out there was for the Filecoin Plus. We don't have to move to the helpers team. That's another thing. I continue building that, and that will take more time, and that's not so related to Filecoin Plus only. But the Slack channel problem we have is that we can try to have conversations there and build something there, but we don't have any other place to redirect the people asking for signatures. So and for approval. So it's kind of, we either have to have another channel to redirect those people, or we create another one for that kind of engagement that's not related to the ask. So because we can certainly have some kind of conversations there where people constantly interrupt with asking things, but it will be difficult. So
Yeah, makes sense. Kerry, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well as somebody who's been a little bit more plugged in.
Yeah,
just another thing.
Say, Alex, one thing that I take away is like big thumbs up. I love enthusiasm. I like looking at like that word helpers. It like conjures to me like the Supermans in the community that are just like walking around with their glasses on, petting their dogs and hanging out in phone booths. I would think probably what I'm hearing is like, we love data. So collect the data on like, what's the best way to calm? And we'll go there. And the second thing that I'm hearing as a community member is it helpful to have all these data requests bombard our public systems? So maybe a secondary thing to look at is like, what can we do to make that data process so fast that people don't have to ask in those public channels? And that'll let you, helpers, anybody, not have to be taken back by that. I think that's a big focus for us. And hopefully we can help on our end make that data process faster so you don't see those requests cuddling up Slack.
Yeah, but I agree with what you say, but that would take some more time then yeah, that would probably not be so fast. And until then, we have a team and a community to grow, help, make things possible. So that's why I'm actually pursuing that second channel or second, because the only way I see we have now is using the Filecoin Plus Slack, where there are those interruptions, and using GitHub. That's another option, but that's too slow and not so many people kind of go there to have conversations. It's more like an initial thing. So yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Today's March 8th. I'm like, come to the sync on March 22nd. We'll be announcing the new notaries. Tell us how many people joined the Discord. It'd be great. Share us some of those conversations. That would be really interesting to see how that develops, and looking forward to it. I appreciate that. Thank you. Definitely looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Sweet. I know that we had a couple people join and then drop. So aside from the helpers team, does anybody want to bring up any other issues on the call while we're still all together?
Well, there's another thing I wanted to ask. Are we aware of the motives people have that are asking for large data sets and don't actually want, like, trying a POC with half the data? Why are they pursuing large amounts of data cap and not like accepting less?
So I guess
not that it's a problem, just asking, like, if we know the reasons behind that.
Yeah, so I think in many cases, actually, it is just not that much data. Like, a lot of POCs are coming in at the Petabyte range, like ones of Petabytes, tens of Petabytes, and in a few cases, hundreds. And the cases where it's more is typically, from my understanding, is two reasons. One is either the format of the data, where it's like really large, like media files, where part of the POC is to test throughput. So they want to know how quickly they can move things on. So having slightly more sample is useful in predicting future load. And then the second is in cases of retrievability, where they want to see what it takes to bring on multiple replicas that are geo-distributed. And so you need to test network capacity, infrastructure load, as well as like ability to access that information and work with enough storage providers such that you can eventually provide CDN-esque backend capability in the long term. But that's like, that's not including this extreme cases, like, for example, like what Bruce just talked about with what Seal Storage is working on, where they have a much bigger POC size. And that's just the nature of like what it takes in their case to prove to the particular scientific organization they're working with. Jacques or Bruce, if you're still here, if you want to share any more on where the 10 Petabyte number comes from, because that is larger than traditional POC, but I know this morning you addressed that question, and so may as well chat through it if you don't mind.
Yeah, just real quick. I mean, as I said on the call earlier, this is an organization that, and by the way, this is not the only organization we are in consultations with that have large data sets. They have enormous amounts of data. The particular organization we're talking about has close to an exabyte of data currently, and they're going into another round of data production, so there will be more. part of the challenge is, when you are of that size and have, budget constraints like everyone else, is you're looking for creative ways to store that data. A lot of their data is currently on tape. I don't think I need to tell anybody about the, dangers of storing important data long-term on tape. So they're looking, unfortunately, keeping that amount of data on disk, in the traditional storage sense has not made economic sense for many people. And we're giving them an opportunity that could make sense and could provide more ready access to their data. I will say also that the particular organization that we're talking about is extremely well known in the scientific community and will be a gateway to further research organizations that also have large amounts of data. So this is something that is net good for the organization. In short, the reason we ask for large data caps is because we're talking to customers with large amounts of data to store.
All right, so that would be not only really needing the full power of the data, but just another thing will be showcasing to help bring more organizations. That's what I understand.
Yeah, I think
it's not that they really need the full the 100% of that data cap, but yeah. So
I think they do need it, actually.
Absolutely,
right?
they need it.
Yeah,
absolutely, they need it. What I'm trying to tell you is that they need more than what we are, looking to bring onto the network right now. And ultimately, the more, I would say, high-profile data that is stored on Filecoin, the greater visibility there is to the world, the more validation is provided to the ecosystem. That's just, I think, in the best interest of everybody.
Yeah, so that's what I said. What I said about being like showcasing. So not only because of course they need everyone needs whatever they can get, but not for a POC. So I'm not saying that this is a problem, but we just kind of trying to understand where things fit. So yeah, that will be not only that they need the data, but they or you will be showcasing and like, yeah, growing that legitimate cases. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Carry it back to you, unless there's any other topics.
Yeah, I think with 3 minutes, we'll say any new business or new topics. I'm going to make the new GitHub repo tonight, early morning. Thank you for flagging these issues in Slack. Thank you for coming to 2 syncs in 1 day. Looking at you, Bruce. Thank you for tagging these in. These are really helping the community. Meg, thank you for calling in while traveling. So just, I guess we'll end with that, a little note of gratitude. I'm going to fast track these recordings. So hopefully I'm going to get this up on YouTube, if not late tonight, early tomorrow morning. And I'm going to include the links for Pooja's DGM so that can all be done just because of that time frame. And also, if you're watching this, I'm also going to post that link to DGM in the Filecoin Plus Slack. And Alexandria, looking forward to hear back from you guys in the coming weeks. Thank you for your time. We'll see you on scoring, and all the best, everyone. Cheers.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.